This week, we're going to learn about two very different cults. Probably really span the entire spectrum of what can happen in a cult. You know, on one hand, you have the maniacal cult leader who will stop at nothing to have full control, who, you know, just is very manipulative and tortures and murders people to make sure that he stays on top. And then on the other hand, you have complete mental instability, where a collection of incredibly short-sighted, stupid people all get together and hilarity ensues. And we're going to look at two examples. We're going to look at an example of each this week on Our Weird World.
Our Weird World.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson. Going for take two on this episode. I recorded this episode, and then my computer just decided there was just an entire 10-minute chunk that it just refused to record. And I didn't realize that until I was done with everything. And then, so now we're here with a new computer. Well, not a new computer, but a different computer. Hopefully one that's a little bit more stable. So we will see. This week, talking about a couple of different cults. Also kind of, switching up the format just a little bit. I think it's a bit of an improvement. Both of these stories, I think, whatever. Both of these stories could have easily just been an episode in and of themselves. It probably would have been about a 10, 15-minute episode. But I just want to make some longer episodes. And so I thought it would be fun, and I'll do this more moving forward, is I'm just going to combine a couple of stories that usually are related in some way. And this week, just a couple of stories about two very different cults. We're going to look at the Anthill Kids and Heaven's Gate. Look, if you're familiar with the Heaven's Gate story, hopefully this first one, is still pretty eye-opening. If you haven't heard Heaven's Gate, hopefully this first story doesn't make it seem any less crazy, because this first story here of the Anthill Kids is absolutely insane. And let's get into both right now. All right, the first story here is about the Anthill Kids, and it starts with a guy named Roch Theriot. At least I think that's how I pronounce his name. It's R-O-C-H. I think it's Roch or Roch, but whatever. He was born on May 16th, 1947 in Saguenay, Quebec. I also think that's how you say that. I don't care. But Saguenay is a decent-sized city, about 300 miles northeast of Montreal. So it's way out in the middle of nowhere, Canada. Although Roch was extremely intelligent, he dropped out of school in the 7th grade and then began teaching himself the Old Testament. All right. Parents, quick learning moment here. Look, I was a very smart 7th grader. I had aspirations of dropping out of school and just going ahead and trying to get into college, because I thought college was going to at least give me the challenge that I wanted, and I probably would have been right. But, you don't listen to your kids. Kids are stupid, and I needed to go all the way through high school. And so if your kid ever's like, yeah, I'm just going to drop out and I'm just going to teach myself the Bible, don't listen to them. Don't let them do it, all right? Because this is the kind of stuff that happens. Roch quickly came to believe that the end of the world was coming, thanks to a new war between good and evil, because that's the most complex thing a 12-year-old brain can process. He denounced his Catholic faith and then joined the Seventh-day Adventists and began living a natural, holistic lifestyle. All right. And now look, I get it. Teenagers have very hard opinions on things, and they're very idealistic, and that carries on through their mid-20s until they finally get enough life experience to learn that they should probably just shut up and that no one really cares about their ideas anymore. So Roch was a very annoying teenager, all right? Not only is he trying to tell you that he is 100% certain that good versus evil is going to come and start fighting each other and the world's going to end. But then he's also telling you to stop eating, chicken nuggets because it's cruel to animals and giving you cancer and all that kind of stuff. Rock actually grew tired of the Adventist rules, just to show you how insufferable he is, because Seventh-day Adventists have some very interesting rules. And by 1977, so at this point, he is about 30 years old. By 1977, he's convinced this small group of people to leave their jobs and homes and join him on a religious movement, a cult. It's what it is. A small religious movement is a cult. And this cult was going to take the form of a commune where people could live equally and free from sin. So now he's a doomsday theorist, a vegan, and a hardcore Marxist, socialist, communist, whatever you want to call it. He prohibited his new followers from communicating with their families and other Seventh-day Adventists, and he became increasingly paranoid that the world was going to end in 2 years. He quickly moved the commune from the small town of Sainte Marie to a sparsely populated area in the Gaspé Peninsula, nearly 400 miles away, where he claimed they would all be saved by God and be safe from this, apocalyptic war that was about to start. While Rock spent his days relaxing, he had the rest of the cult members build an entire town out of this remote wilderness out in the middle of nowhere. He compared them all to ants working on an anthill, ultimately going so far as to call them his anthill kids, which is where the name of this cult comes from. Well, like every other doomsday prediction ever by a cult leader, the world didn't end in 1979 like he predicted. And when that happened, people smartly began to question whether or not Rock was a legitimate prophet. But like a great cult leader, he was super charismatic, super believable, and like all cult members who were incredibly gullible and really stupid, he just explained that Earth time and God time were two completely different things, and he had just simply miscalculated. He's just like, hey guys, no, this is not what happened. What you don't understand. I don't know what accent this is, but it's happening right now. The time the time that you and I know that we have grown up with on Earth, it is not what God time is. All right, the God time, very different time. And I am mortal, I am imperfect. But that is why. Because God time, a little different. And I must recalculate and figure out where the end of the world, when the good versus evil war is going to happen. And then I'll get back to you. Now get back to work. Get back. I don't know why it turned into Arnold Schwarzenegger there. Anyway, the cult members seemed totally okay with this. And as he worked on his new Armageddon date, Rock also made sure that no one in the cult would leave by impregnating every single woman in the commune. And that resulted in 20 children with 9 different mothers. And by 1980, the cult had 40 members, over half of which were directly related to Rock in some way. He also began, if it wasn't clear already, he slowly began to lose his mind. It didn't help that he had a severe drinking problem, which slowly turned him into this maniacal dictator at the commune. It got to a point where he prohibited members from speaking or having sex with each other unless he was pregnant. And he was so charismatic and believable that no one really thought any of these orders were out of the ordinary. If a member wanted to leave the group or began, quote, straying, Rock would assault them with a belt or a hammer, suspend them from a ceiling, pluck individual hairs from their body, or just turn around, drop his pants, kind of spread his butt cheeks out a little bit, and drop a big old fudge dragon right on their chest. All right. I love how just that the insanity just ramped up to 10. I didn't even warn you because I don't like to warn you. I just that's my style. I'm just going to get into a story and then out of nowhere, just a huge pivot into insanity. It's like no one can talk to each other. No one can make the love unless I'm present. I must make sure you're all following my teachings and the ways of the Lord at all times. And if you stray, I stand on top of you and on the you. All right. This is weird. I haven't even drunk anything tonight. I'm mentally unstable. Shockingly, these punishments actually got even worse. Members would be forced to break their own legs with sledgehammers, sit on hot stoves, shoot each other, cut each other's toes off, and eat their own feces. And of course, no cult would be complete if they didn't abuse the kids, which is exactly what happened, in the form of severe molestation, just holding them over fire, or nailing them to trees while other kids threw rocks at them. It's insane. But all of this, according to Rock, was his way of purifying. Guys, I don't want to poop on you. I don't want to watch you break each other's legs. I don't want to nail your children to the trees and throw rocks at them. I do it because you are impure, and this is how I purify you. Okay? That's all it is. I do this out of love, because I love my little anthill kids. You are my little ants. And sometime I must hold the magnifying glass up into the sun and burn you alive, because you are impure, you dumb little ants, and I must help you. You must understand. If his followers they couldn't simply just ask for forgiveness, and so he would just beat it out of them. He claimed to be this holy being, and he started performing various medical procedures on his followers to prove it. For example, he performed several circumcisions on both children and adults, which there's a reason why you circumcise a baby, because their brain can't, truly process memories and pain. You don't remember it, because that would be a very traumatizing thing to have someone walk up to you and slice a piece of your dick off. All right. Anyone who had a stomach bug, just like, you got a little food poisoning, or you just got a little stomach flu or whatever, Rock would inject 94% ethanol directly into their stomachs. Which, by the way, look, I know you're probably not a medical student, but that doesn't work. All right. On one occasion, Rock laid a sick follower out on a table, punched her in the stomach, jammed a plastic tube up her butt, and then gave her an enema of molasses and olive oil. And when that didn't produce immediate positive results, he cut her stomach open with zero anesthesia, and he ripped out a portion of her intestine with his bare, unsterilized hands. He then ordered another member to stitch her up, shove another plastic tube down her throat, and blow as hard as he could. And none of that obviously worked, because that's not how standard medicine is practiced. And so the woman died the next day, which I'm sure that doesn't surprise you in the least. But Rock, he was like, look, you guys, I know she's dead. She was going to die anyway. All right. My procedure would have worked. All right. If God it was not in his plan to take her, but I can bring her back. I have the gift of resurrection. Okay. And so here's what he did. He took a drill, bored a hole into her skull, and then ordered several male members to ejaculate into the hole. And of course that didn't work. But it's like how insane. Like, this guy is either a maniacal genius, or he is truly mentally deficient. And I think it's the first one. Like, it's just, at what point, like, how ridiculous do you have to keep getting until people call you out? And they didn't. They just did what he told them to do. It's like, all right, look, you guys, I drill a hole in dead person's skull. What I need you to do is take out your wieners and just give a little shucka, and just right in there. Right in the hole. Because you are going to give her brain life, and it will bring her back to life. And everyone just did it. And it's so weird. That's such a weird visual. Just like all these dudes standing in a circle around this dead woman with a hole in her head, just just jacking it. Oh God. Anyway, in 1987, Canadian social workers showed up at the compound and removed 17 children from the site. I don't know if they got tipped off or what happened, but they showed up and the conditions were so terrible that they took 17 of the children away. Rock, unfortunately, somehow avoided getting into any sort of trouble. But one follower, Gabrielle Lavallee, tried to escape after having her genitals torched, part of her breast cut off, having a hypodermic needle broken off in her back, and 8 teeth forcibly removed. Which, I get it. Like, I think if someone does that to me, I'm probably going to look at ways to get as far away as I can. Not going to lie, probably would have tried to leave after after I got my privates torched. But hey, some people are just a little bit more committed than I am, and that's admirable to a degree. Rock caught Gabrielle before she could fully escape and chopped off one of her fingers with a wire cutter as her hand was pinned to a table with a knife. All right. That is like some horror movie stuff, It's like he grabs her, keeps her from escaping, drags her back to the commune, slams a knife through her hand into a table, and then cuts off one of her fingers with a wire cutter. Not a sharp knife, but a wire cutter. Ugh. And that wasn't even enough, because then he chopped off her arm with a chainsaw. I almost glossed over that huge detail. But 2 years later, Gabrielle finally escaped and told police everything. All right. Police at this point, they already knew that Rock was weird, but because the group was registered as a church, Canadian police were legally prohibited from doing anything about it, which, seems like a really big loophole in Canadian laws that should probably get addressed. Despite all of the evidence against him, in terms of like torture, child abuse, all that kind of stuff, Rock was only convicted of amputating Gabrielle's arm, and he was just given a 12-year prison sentence. And while in prison, Rock somehow fathered 4 more children with his followers during conjugal visits. But Gabrielle, God bless her, to her credit, she did not stop trying to put him away forever. And in 1993, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was given a life sentence. At that point, the Anthill Kids finally disbanded. And Rock ended up dying on February 26, 2011. And I love this. After he was beaten to death by his cellmate, who was a 60-year-old convicted murderer, Matthew McDonald. All right. So I hope he probably didn't, probably because he didn't have a lot of resources in prison with him. But I really hope McDonald just tortured Rock Theriault to death. Stabbed him a bunch of times with just a really dull shiv, and then somehow dislocated Rock's arm and then made him and jammed it up his own butt. That would be pretty sweet. Man, all right, well, I'm concerned for myself now. Let's move on to Heaven's Gate. This one is a little bit more of a popular cult, outside of maybe the Jim Jones cult, which we will probably cover at some point on the show. Heaven's Gate was one of those more widely known cults, and it kind of started all back in 1972 when Marshall Applewhite was fired from his teaching position at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas, over an alleged homosexual relationship with one of his students. To make things worse, he was sent to a mental institution, which I guess shouldn't be too surprising because that's just how you expect Texas to treat homosexuals. But during his time there, he met a woman named Bonnie Nettles, and she was a 44-year-old married nurse, and the two became close friends, right? And Applewhite really believed that the two had met in a past life. And Bonnie even claimed that their meeting had been foretold to her by extraterrestrials and that God had given Applewhite a divine assignment. And look, as a side note here, mental institutions probably should not employ mentally unstable people, all right? Especially people who believe that God is real and that there are aliens out there who are vastly superiorly intellectual. All right. And look, like I'm there could be a whole podcast about how belief in aliens and then belief in like a Christian type religion don't really mix. And you'd have to get like super weird because on one hand, you either have to believe that God created other intellectual creatures and then they too, like he would have had to send like a different son, I guess, to save them. Or you could be super ignorant and be like, well, no, we have to go convert the aliens to Christianity because Jesus died for the aliens too. Like you see how just insane all of this becomes? It's certainly plausible, but it just sounds insane. All right. After spending the next few months reading about St. Francis of Assisi and reading books by Richard Bach, Arthur C. Clarke, and studying the Bible, Applewhite and Bonney both concluded that God had chosen them to fulfill biblical prophecies and that they had been blessed with a higher level of intelligence than those around them. And there's nothing sadder, but also few things more hilarious than an incredibly stupid person wholly believing that they are smarter than everyone else. And that's going to drive the rest of this story. They wrote a pamphlet claiming that Jesus had been reincarnated as a Texan because obviously, all right, that's right, man. God is a Texan straight through and through. All right. And so look, I get it. Jesus, his one and only son, he had to be a Jew. All right. Because God bless him. Them people have had it pretty rough. All right. Been mistreated. I get it. All right. Them other, turban wearing brown people out there, they're taking their land and enslaving them. And that ain't right. But now we got that all figured out. All right. We got it figured out for him over here. So now Jesus come back as his true form, as a God-fearing Texan, because ain't nothing better on this planet than being a Texan. Yes, sir. That's right. All right. Anyway, and they believe that Applewhite was the reincarnation of Jesus. They also claimed that they were the two witnesses described in the book of Revelation, which really signified that they had no idea how the prophecy in Revelation worked. And if you're unfamiliar with that passage in the book of Revelation, at some point there are two quote-unquote witnesses that show up and just kind of start checking things out or whatever. And almost all biblical scholars will tell you that the two witnesses are likely Enoch and Elijah because if you go back to their stories in the Old Testament, those two men did not actually die. They just kind of ascended to heaven while they were still... Yeah, that's lovely. I'm keeping that in there. But those two ascended to heaven when they died. The two who actually called themselves the Two, or the UFO Two, started traveling to various churches and spiritual groups around Texas to tell their story. And they believed that they would eventually be killed, brought back to life, and then transported to a spaceship where they would live happily ever after. And not surprisingly, people in Texas were not on board with this idea. All right. But Applewhite and Bonney, they were determined to prove themselves right and make contact with aliens, which they believe also had some sort of connection with Jesus. And so the two began advertising meetings and recruiting disciples, morons, to join, quote, the crew. At these meetings, Applewhite and Bonney claimed to be aliens themselves from a planet called the Next Level, right? Not a cool planet name like, Chrysanthemum or Plumeria, that's a flower. Anyway, but the Next Level. Idiots. But this is really cool. Not cool. That's not the right word. But if you're keeping track at this point, Applewhite and Bonney have now claimed to be the reincarnation of Jesus, prophets from Revelation, and aliens, right? And they advertised that they were looking for participants in an experiment, and those who agreed to participate were promised to achieve a higher evolutionary level, which, if you know anything about Texas, it's that evolution is the devil. And to say that you are a Jesus alien who can help people evolve to a higher level of being is so much wrong. that the average Texan's head would explode. Like their brain would literally hemorrhage and start flowing out of their nose at that much blasphemy. All right. By 1975, however, the crew, which was growing, had changed their name to Heaven's Gate, and they sold all of their material possessions and assembled at a hotel in Waldport, Oregon. The next day after they had assembled, about 100 members of Heaven's Gate went completely off the grid. They followed Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, who now went by Doe and T, across several states, sleeping in tents, panhandling in the cities, just easy way to make cult money. And for the next decade, this is what they did, and they grew in numbers. All right, Applewhite and Bonnie, Doe and T, they continued to build on this idea that they were extraterrestrials sent by God to help people become more evolved beings, which now that's honestly pretty brilliant because they have now found a way to combine three totally different belief systems. All right, you have Christianity and ufology kind of melded together with the idea of Scientology. All right, and if you don't know anything about Scientology, it's basically the idea that there's this group of aliens and then they were disembodied from their souls, but then their souls entered humans and they control humans. And so we are not in charge of our bodies, but it's these thetans or some, I don't know, man, it's exhausting. Anyway, but that's kind of what Marshall Applewhite was really teaching. Unfortunately, Bonnie Nettles died in 1985, which forced Applewhite to kind of redesign the group's entire philosophy. And this is what he came up with. First, and here's where, you kind of get this doomsday element. He believed that the earth was about to be recycled by God and that the only way to survive was to leave the planet as soon as possible. And although the group was against suicide, they defined suicide as refusing entry to the next level, the fancy planet, when it was offered, which that is not even remotely close to what the actual definition of suicide is. But more on that in a minute. Members also needed to eliminate every aspect of human attachment, including family, friends, sexual orientation, jobs, and possessions. All right. Next, Tila, the evolutionary level above human, was this new world in which residents achieved pure bliss and found nourishment only through direct sunlight. All right. So now there's two planets. I guess there's the next level and Tila, where you're just going to go be a plant and be photosynthesis all the time and be super evolved, I guess. That's really stupid. Applewhite also believed that the being that the Bible refers to as God was actually just this super smart alien. And then last, evil space aliens called Luciferians were disguising themselves as God to Earthlings to deceive humanity and keep them from evolving. And everyone was just totally okay with that. All right. And so by the mid-90s, Heaven's Gate was really starting to focus on the approaching comet Hale-Bopp, which they believed was their key to getting out of Earth and going to heaven, or Tila. The group used the internet, the early form of the internet, to upload all kinds of weird videos discussing their beliefs, one of which asserted that a spaceship was cruising behind the comet's tail, which would transport them to Tila. And because it was the internet, these videos gained a huge following. And the group went on to purchase alien abduction insurance, which covered 50 members and would pay out $1 million per person in the event of an alien abduction, impregnation by an alien, or death. And look, I'm all for exploiting and taking advantage of incredibly stupid people like this. But the fact that there are insurance companies out there who are offering alien abduction insurance, like, who is sitting around right now just like, God, man, our house is insured. All right, we've got our cars insured. Our four-wheelers are insured. We got our jet skis and our pontoon. They're insured. The motorcycle's taken care of. God, I've insured your engagement ring. I've insured just anything. And now you're telling me that I can insure myself in the event that an alien comes to Earth. All right. And either abducts me Or like we get in some weird alien movie with Jodie Foster or Meg Ryan or whoever it was. I don't know. I didn't see the movie, but I know it's a thing. It's an iconic scene, so people say. But like an alien like probes me and impregnates me, and you just see a little alien face in my stomach or whatever. And if that happens, my family gets $1 million. So, yes. Where do I sign? That sounds like I need that for sure. I don't know why you didn't offer it to me sooner, right? Like, it's insane. In 1997, Heaven's Gate moved their headquarters to the monastery, which was a 9,000 square foot mansion in San Diego. A year later, in 1998, not quite a year later, Applewhite gathered a group of members together at the monastery and began preparing to ascend the spaceship. And the problem was that they had no way to make it to the spaceship unless they all committed like actual suicide. And I like, how does that conversation go down? You know, it's like, well, gentlemen, the spaceship is coming, Comet Hale-Bopp. It's behind the clouds. Obviously, you can't see it because the comet is creating a very thick, very opaque cloud of cosmic space dust. But the spaceship is behind it. It's getting a good draft. So it is conserving fuel so that it can come and rescue us. We are an outlying outpost in the solar system. But the issue is that we do not have an earthly vessel to get up and meet the spaceship, and that's fine because God has told me that these earthly bodies would not perform well in outer space. The space is a vacuum, as you may know, and our souls would literally get sucked out of one of our orifices into the depths of space, which could greatly impact our ability to get to Tila. And so what we must do is we must kill our earthly bodies and allow our souls to ascend up into the spaceship.
Yeah, Marshall, that sounds like you want us to commit suicide.
What have I told you? That is not suicide. Suicide. You are committing suicide right now, Dave, because you are refusing entry into Tila. How many times do I have to explain it? You are letting the Luciferians really guide your thinking right now, man. And I've got to tell you, man, I'm very concerned. I'm really concerned about you right now because you are committing spiritual suicide by refusing the gift of entry into Tila to experience higher evolutionary status. All right. And look, I get it. All right. But that is why I brought you here. And I told you to give up your family, to give up your money, to give up your job, to give up your possessions, because everything in this planet is touched by the Luciferians. The Luciferians want to control your mind. They want to make you think, oh, life on Earth is super sweet, man. Let's just all live in peace and harmony. And let's all get cool stuff. Like whatever's cool in the late 90s right now. And it will distract you, and you're going to miss your opportunity to evolve as a being because you let yourself go and be deceived by the Luciferians. Please do not let that. Okay, anyway, I went on a longer tangent than I wanted to there. Basically, on March 26, 1997, Applewhite and 38 other members of Heaven's Gate were found dead inside the monastery after ingesting phenobarbital mixed with applesauce and vodka. And apparently they were very concerned as to whether or not the phenobarbital would actually work. And so to make sure they finished the job, they wrapped plastic bags around their heads and so they would suffocate. What was weird about this is when all the bodies were found, everyone was wearing a black shirt, black sweatpants, and black and white Nikes. After word of this mass suicide got out, the rest of the cult supporters in locations all around the world just kind of lost interest and probably just moved on to something more ridiculous. And that ends today's stories. All right, there you go. The Anthill Kids and Heaven's Gate. If you couldn't tell, I had some fun with those. Completely sober, by the way, which is concerning. Can't wait till I do one of these episodes slightly drunk. Which I think what I'm going to do for the 100th episode is to just get super trashed and try to record an episode. I think that'll be really fun. One last, part of me in some sort of fantasy way kind of hopes that Heaven's Gate made it to their spaceship comet place. That'd just be, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah. Just eat their applesauce, put their little bag on their head, and then they just wake up on a spaceship heading towards the new planet with alien Jesus or whatever. That would just be nice. We need some nice things in the world. Let's see what we learned today.
What did we
Number
learn?
1, don't let your kid drop out of school after the 7th grade and then teach himself the Bible, and then become a vegan, and then become a hardcore socialist, communist, whatever, because it's not going to end well. All right. If anything, they're just not going to have a lot of friends, and what friends they do have are going to be insanely insufferable. So parents, please do a good job raising your kids. Number 2, you can apparently buy alien abduction insurance. I don't know who sells it. I can't imagine it is a legitimate insurance company. It's probably like some weird strip mall insurance company in like a really seedy part of town, who sells insurance for other really dumb things like, mole people, yard destruction insurance, or, acid rain, house melting insurance. I don't know. Yeah, it's so strange. And number 3, guys, we've had it wrong the whole time. All right. Jesus, not particularly fully human. He is an alien. All right. God, also an alien, very smart alien, smartest alien ever. And, he has other species, other intelligent species out there in various galaxies and solar systems around the universe. And, God, in his infinite alien wisdom, sent Jesus, his most human-looking son, because, really, what has abs that are that naturally solid like that? No one does. Anyway, and sent Jesus to atone for the sins of humankind. And meanwhile, God was sending other progeny to other alien civilizations to give them the same treatment. And, at the end of the day, we just gotta give up everything because, look, you guys, it's not about good and evil. It's not about Satan or the devil. The idea of Lucifer and demons and all that, it's a bastardization of what the Bible says, because what's really going on is there are Luciferians all around us, all of your material possessions, all of the people who are bad influences on you, your own parents, your best friends, your boss, your coworkers, the guy at the Starbucks drive-thru. Everyone is a Luciferian who is trying to bring you down.
If everyone's a Luciferian, does that mean I'm a Luciferian? Or how do we know that you're not a Luciferian?
Dave! I swear to God, Dave. Honestly, you may have some Luciferians in your brain, because what kind of question is that? I am the reincarnation of alien Jesus. I am the two witnesses from Revelation. I can see through all of this. And man, that's a Luciferian question. All right. And I have serious concerns about you right now. All right. I'm going to put some extra vodka in your applesauce. And I hope it makes your face explode, because you are a strain on my sanity. I am trying to save all of you, and you're making it very, very difficult. Next week on Our Weird World, we're going to get sciencey. We're going to have a very scientific episode, and I know that sounds boring, but come on, there is not going to be a boring episode. Well, I can't say that for sure, but this is going to be really interesting. All right, we're going to look at some people who really did their best to advance human knowledge and scientific exploration. Some actually succeeded in very interesting ways, and some failed horribly. We're going to look at the story of Henry Coxwell, the Rainmaker, Duncan McDougal, and lawn chair Larry Walters. So that'll be fun. Hopefully I'll have just as much fun doing that one as I did this one. And as always, thank you all for listening. Tell all your friends how crazy I am, and keep it weird.
Hey guys, is anybody there? Did anybody else make it to the spaceship? Is it just me? Marsha? Anybody? Ha ha ha! I knew I was right all along. Everyone else was Luciferian, and even whoever it was, one of them Luciferians disguised themselves as Marshall Applewhite. Tried to trick me. I knew he couldn't. I found it out. Now I'm gonna go meet alien Jesus wherever the comet spaceship takes me, and I will achieve a new evolutionary state, and it's gonna be great.